Good afternoon. My name is John Pelton. I'm the Enterprise Program Director at Costain. I have some 20 odd plus years of experience of working around human settlements, and in particular around the program solutions to the infrastructure needed to support them. And so what I'd like to do is to spend 6 to 7 minutes just introducing you to a programmatic perspective towards developing human settlements. So the first question then is, well, why programmatic? And I'd like to share this diagram. It's called cynefin, which is Welsh for habitat. And at the center of it is the state that most of us spend much of our lives in, to some extent, in a confused state. And the idea behind the diagram is that it shows you the different states that we try to move away from when we're confused in order to clarify and to sort out where we are. So at the top right, you have clear, which is easy. You go, if you're hungry, you go and buy food, you eat food. It's clear. Anyone can do it. It's known and familiar. Then you move up to complicated. Probably not something you can tackle. Maybe your house heating system has failed. So it's reducible, straightforward problem-solving stuff, but you need an expert to come in and do it because they've got a better idea and they've got more training and they can expand to cope with the complicated system they're dealing with. But then we move on to complex. Now we introduce uncertainty, people, relationships, unknowns, and it needs a different treatment with flexibility, probing, testing, trialing, introducing new ideas, thinking about things in different ways. I'll come back to that in a second. The final one is chaotic, which is not something we tend to do with this environment. It's the sort of state of war, for example, or a major transport crash or something like that. And it needs a different treatment altogether. I would just observe that if it's not a sequence. You can go from clear to chaotic in a very short time. For example, if you do buy a train ticket, that's simple and clear. But if there's a points failure, suddenly the whole system becomes chaotic. But I would like to dwell on complex because this is an area that requires a slightly different treatment. And the treatment that most program project people apply is program thinking, because program thinking operates in the complex environment. And it does so by reducing the environment to a system of systems approach. So therefore, program is systems thinking. Now, with that in mind, let's have a look at what a programmatic approach, what might actually be. I'll let you read the definition at the top as I explain it from right to left in the picture below. So the first thing is that programmatic approach is vision goal based. And the vision and the goals, and I've used these words to show this. Other people use different words. It doesn't matter at all. But the vision, the end state, the future state, defines what it is you're after and also captures the benefits that you're seeking to achieve from whatever it is you're doing. To achieve those goals, you need outcomes. Outcomes, why outcomes? Well, because an output is simply a tangible thing. And until you, organizationally or culturally or socially, to bring it to life, a business change, you can't deliver an outcome. And so the outcome is the product of an output or outputs and business change or changes. And in very simple terms, that is the programmatic model. And that is the system that the programmatic thinkers use to tackle complex problems. So let's turn to a complex problem. What about an example? Well, here's an example from 170 odd years ago. Liverpool in 1848 was so badly affected by the morbidities of life, disease, that people were shying away from using the port, and the port was beginning to fail. It was overloaded with immigrants, and the mortality rates were appalling. Life expectancy was about 19, and something had to be done. So they defined a vision. And I do apologize, I should say 1848, but it says 1846, but don't worry. A city and port with a thriving economic future in which its people could live without being afflicted by the principal killer, waterborne enteric disease. Let me introduce you to these two gentlemen. The one on the left is James Newland, who was appointed as the city engineer. And the one on the right is Dr. Duncan, who was appointed as the city chief medical officer, both in response to this vision. The two of these defined and built a set of goals and outcomes, and then put in place the business changes. Note that there are business changes here too, because it's all very well building the buildings, but actually you needed mechanisms for coordinating and controlling them. Actually, some of those would, by our standards, be considered quite brutal. Slum clearance is not necessarily a very pretty thing, but it achieved the end game. And of course, in terms of the water and sewerage, you need methods for managing it, controlling it, planning it, and all the rest of it. But those were the outputs: the slum clearances, new water systems, and new sewerage. So there's an example of programmatic thinking enacted by some far-sighted city fathers who delivered a solution for Liverpool, which, by the way, doubled the life expectancy at least 10 years before Mr. Bazalgette tried the same thing in London. Let me give you another example. Here, something a little bit more familiar for most. This is London 2012. Which adopted a very similar approach, albeit with different parameters and some different language. But there we are, the vision at the top. It wasn't, by the way, to build an Olympics, it was to inspire a generation. And there you can see the mission, which brings you down into the themes, if you like, the outcomes that were desired. And those outcomes, of course, now are beginning to reflect UN Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainability is in there, the environment, people, diversity, skills. And of course, the objectives, the projects that turned out were the venues and the site platform. So there's two examples which show how programmatic thinking can affect the human settlements that we live and build for ourselves, live in and build for ourselves. Let me conclude with some reflections on what the themes are that govern them all. First of all, a vision. It's essential to have a future state, and the longer term, the better. So you start right to left thinking. They are characterized by complexity. You need to respond to that complexity. Clear governance is essential. They are multidimensional problems: medics, engineers, transport planners, you name it. Flexibility is axiomatic, and social change is an inevitable consequence and part of the process. I hope that helps you. Thank you very much for your time.